We are back with Mark and also with Madeline. So glad to have you guys today. So this very interesting thing happened where Bloomberg wrote a story up about Trump Labor Department officials' supposed anti-Semitic post. And they pulled out these Facebook posts that in the abstract, isolated, sounded very, very bad. But then, if you read the entire context, you find that this guy, Leif Olson, was not actually making anti-Semitic comments. He was making fun of people who do make anti-Semitic comments. I believe we have his response that we can put up here. It's really super long and I can't read it. But I'm sure that he explains that this was not really anti-Semitic comments. He was being sarcastic. And nevertheless, he had to resign. What does this say, Madeline, about the culture that we are living in? Frankly, I'm kind of shocked that he did resign rather than pushing back. But what is going on here?
I'm surprised, too, that the administration responded how they did. I would have expected them to have a more Trumpian response, like stand behind their guy, say, no, this is our guy, not back down. But the bigger picture is the fact that you see this internet cancel culture creeping into our journalism and our news media, and I don't think it's good for civil society. The same thing happened with the Covington Catholic students, right? Journalists are trolling through people's social media posts from years ago just to find something to get them fired or make them resign, and I don't think it's healthy.
Well, and let's just point out, this is not a left-right phenomenon, right? I mean, you have right now activists who are trolling through journalists' social media feeds to try to find something to ruin them and get them fired. Mark, to me, part of the problem here is this guy, I think, has views that are abhorrent. I don't think that someone who has the views he has on workers and labor should be in this position of power in the Labor Department. But if you're going to go after someone for their views, actually go after them for the thing that matters rather than trying to pull something out of context and ruin their life for it.
Yeah, I think that what's really important here, I agree here that going through someone's social media profile is probably not the most effective thing for civil society, and it's not necessarily going to raise the level of discourse in a way that we think is important or that is important. I think that the big issue here, one, is that look, you need to be very careful on social media generally, whether or not you have abhorrent views or not. I also think the key here is going to be vetting, right? For a lot of reasons, you want to really make sure that somebody is fit for office. I don't think that the Trump White House the staff is pretty skeletal at this point. And I think that's the first thing, is to make sure someone's fit for office, and they probably aren't in this particular instance. And that's important for both the administration, but also for that particular person too. In some instances, I really think that making sure someone is fit for office, that question could have been answered early.
Fit for office. I mean, he's coming in with views that align with the duly elected president of the United States. So he's executing on a vision that the American people voted for, whether you agree with it or you don't. And even if he had gone through vetting, since this was so obviously a sarcastic comment, I mean, how that would have passed vetting. All you had to do is explain it to the, PPO, the Presidential Personnel Office, and just say, yeah, that was a sarcastic comment that I made on my personal Facebook page, 5 years ago or whatever it was. It's not even relevant to this conversation. So, it's not even a vetting issue to that regard.
Well, it is in this way, and that is that when you're vetting someone and then that information reaches the highest level, you're at least able to make that decision and make that determination as to whether or not this is going to be helpful down the road or not help, right? So that's at least gets you to a point where you're able to have that conversation, whether the comments were right or wrong. That's a particularly important thing. I also am. I agree here that I was surprised. I thought that the White House would stick by this particular person, but I also think, I don't know whether or not it got to the White House. This could have been a decision that was made.
I'm sure it's made at
the Department of Labor.
What do you think, Madeline,
I think
about
that's
that?
almost comes across as victim blaming. We're saying it's the administration's fault or it's that person's fault for this journalist attacking them. I think the bigger conversation should be about, this is not journalism, right? That is, he was obviously obviously disagreed with this man's politics, and he was looking for something on his Facebook page to prove that point, that he was bad at wage labor policy, and instead he found this and decided to go this personal attack, and then made that the story and said he had a scoop. That's not how media works.
Yeah. How has Bloomberg responded? Do we know?
They did. They responded to Washington Post and said they stood by their reporting.
Interesting. Another development that we've been following here, Joe Manchin, senator from West Virginia, of course, one of the most sort of centrist Democratic senators who's there, frequently works with Republicans, sometimes works with the president, and is one of the only Democrats, I think it's fair to say, who could probably hold that Senate seat at this point, given the national climate as it applies to West Virginia. He was contemplating leaving the Senate and going back to run for governor in West Virginia. And frankly, Mark, I've done a lot of work in West Virginia. I know a fair amount of people here. Everybody thought he was going to run for governor. Up until yesterday, he announced he's going to stay in the Senate. What do you think of this development?
I think I kind of expected it in a number of ways. He just won his Senate seat. He would have had to immediately, start a campaign. Not immediately, but he wouldn't have had much downtime between the last election and this particular election. He's also ranking member on Energy and Natural Resources, so I can see him looking down the road to 2020 and saying if the Democrats win back the Senate, then he's going to be chair of that committee. So in those respects, I think it was, I can see how the decision was made on his part.
Yeah.
It's so funny coming from a man who pretty openly said that he thought being a senator was one of the worst jobs after having been governor.
And he seems to have loved being governor. Yeah, so it was sort of surprising. I mean, it bodes well for Democrats' chances at, I think it's still very much a long shot to take back the Senate. But the fact that he's sticking around makes me think maybe he thinks there's a possibility here.
I assume that Democrats are happy about it overall. Even though he would love to be governor, it gives them another vote in the Senate. Even if they don't take it back, he is a constant swing vote, even if it's only on issues that he's not a deciding vote. But I assume if you're a Democrat, you're happy that he's sticking around in the Senate.
Yeah, we should also
so tight.
Yeah, exactly. We should also mention there is another candidate who's running for governor in West Virginia who's a more sort of populist, more progressive than Joe Manchin, and interestingly has had a massive swell of grassroots fundraising support for his campaign. So there may be something there.
Yeah, I think that this is, it's really important, this grassroots support, right? I support anything that gets people to the polls, gets people excited. From a local level. I think from a national level, you still have to start thinking about, is this a race where you want to pour money into, right?
Yeah.
The previous...
Jim Justice, though, is tremendously unpopular in the state. He's made a number of... West Virginia is one of the states where you had the largest teachers movement, teachers strike. He was really, hated throughout that whole process. And at the state level, that can change a lot of minds.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that's the case. And I think if you continue to build momentum and grassroots support, I think there is a chance. But there's always, the idea that, for example, in this last election, Donald Trump only won that state had his second highest margin of victory in that state. So it's a real question. But as you said, I'm really excited that this is happening.
Thank you, guys. Great to have you both today. Tomorrow on Rising, the Mooch, Anthony Scaramucci, is going to tell us more about why he went from the president's ally to his detractor.
And we've talked about his potential Senate bid on the show. Tomorrow, Corey Lewandowski shares more about it and his thoughts on President Trump's time in office so far.
Guys, make sure to click subscribe, hit that bell so you know when we post new videos. You don't want to miss any of this. You know it. Also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Hill TV Live. Lauren, thank you so much for helping us out these past days. Always great to have you.
It was so great to be here.
You guys have a fabulous day. See you back here tomorrow.